Welcome back to the Daily Y. Today we're going to be diving into UAP'S and UFOs. Are they real? I don't know. Let's find out.
And if they are real, are they something new or are they something that's always been there? Are there ancient links to what we call UFOs today? And if so, where can we find them?
So, dude, all these UAP'S and UFOs, what the hell is happening?
You know what shits me?
Yeah.
No one is talking about it. Like, you would think that the whole world is like actually interested in this because it's like extraterrestrial life finally.
Right? Yeah, because they don't believe them. It's like way back in the days when the whole Roswell incident happened. Yeah. The government was saying, "Oh no, aliens don't exist. This was nothing." And we obviously didn't believe them then, but now they're coming out and saying, "No, actually, everything's true. They really are there," and we still don't believe them.
Humans are weird, man, because if there's like a certain allure about something, it's like they want to dig into it like as if something's being hidden. But
Yeah.
when it's literally in your face, like you're not believing it. Like,
Yeah, I know. Well, everything comes out like Project Bluebeam and all this other shit, where people have started these conspiracy theories, and then now they're finally coming out and saying, "Oh, this shit's true." We don't believe them.
do you know the question is why are they coming out with it now? Because if they didn't want to come out with it, they really won't.
No, they didn't. Maybe they're being pressured by those other guys. So I've heard a few people say this, right? And basically what they're saying is that they had an amount of time that they would have to release this to the public, right? Saying that the whole world needs to know about us. And then our government saying the majority of our population isn't ready for something like this. So they're like, yeah, okay, all good. But you need to set like an amount of time that you're going to slowly start releasing this stuff. So what do with our movies? They start showing us, the symbolism.
It's predictive programming.
Predictive programming, right? And then just slowly over time getting us used to the idea of other species out there. They've got like Star Trek and, they've got Stargate, which are my favorite films, by the way. But, yeah, man, like just slowly releasing it, like slowly opening up the tap a bit more until it all rushes out.
Well, if you have a look at the 90s, the 80s and the 90s, all the movies were about terrorism, right?
Yeah.
Now, all the movies now are
Alien invasion.
like alien invasions and apocalypse and, all this deconstruction of society.
Yeah, 100%. So it does blow me away a lot. And what about this guy? What was his name? David Grush. So this is the guy who's been coming out and he's in front of the Senate. He's telling them all, "I had higher security clearance than all of you," and they're baffled because they're like, "We thought we had the highest security clearance there was." And I remember them asking him this one question, and it was, "So who's in control of the clearance and stuff? Are they bodies of the government?" And then it was really quick, and he comes back, he goes, "Both in and out." Didn't even think about it. Both in and out. So they're either both, there are government bodies, and then there's privately owned bodies. So, for example, they're obviously using like private companies as well.
I reckon that there's a lot of people pulling the strings that have known about this because I don't think aliens are a new thing. I don't think that there's something that's just come out now.
Yeah.
I think it's something I personally believe that they're ancient, because if you have a look at mythology and stuff like that, it's all about foreign invaders or foreign gods. So the ancients knew it. I think the only difference since like World War II era is that we've developed a society that's very scientific.
Yeah.
So before, I reckon this stuff would have been manifested in sorcery and divination and stuff like that.
Yeah, they would have perceived them as gods.
Whereas now, it's UFOs and, you know, all that sort of thing, but integrated into science and tech. And you see that in the movies as well. So you see like, you know, Transformers, even the Fast and the Furious, it doesn't have aliens, but this whole concept of the God's eye. Right?
Yeah.
They find like, or Indiana Jones, right?
Yeah, the crystal skull.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So you find like this magical, whatever it is, rock, and, you know, it possesses knowledge or power or whatever. And obviously the movies
Like
have a twist on it.
Crystals,
Exactly.
yeah.
So crystals are not a new thing either. So back then, you know, a guy might see a rock and say, you know what, I'm going to carve this rock because this rock has an association with the gods or whatever their superstition may be. And then he'll make an idol out of the rock and he'll worship the rock. But now the rock's got a little bit of life inside it.
Now, here's what gets me, right? Okay, so have you seen Stargate at all?
I haven't, but tell me.
Okay, so for those of you out there who have seen Stargate SG-1, there's this episode, right, where basically this guy has made a TV show and it's very, very extremely similar to what they're actually doing behind the scenes. And they're like, well, what the fuck is this? This is a security leak. Yeah. They're like, so what are we going to do? Are we going to shut this show down? And then the head general goes, no, actually, we're going to keep this show running. So if anything does happen and we have to come up with a excuse to see what happened, then we're going to pin it on that show instead of, you know what I mean? So, which made me think, are they doing this whole episode just to tell us that the Stargate itself is happening? Because with Stargate, right, Cheyenne Mountain, it's actually Area 52.
Okay.
Right?
Instead of Area 51.
Yeah, it's an actual place and it's Area 52. And inside the place, they've got this big Stargate and the big alien fucking bunch of other shit happens. Like, I don't want to dive too deep into it because you don't know anything about it. But another thing about it, so a bunch of the aliens that they fight are called the Goa'uld, right? And they're all based on the ancient Egyptian gods.
Yep.
Yeah, I actually think you might get a kick out of it.
Yeah, I definitely got to watch that.
You should watch it. It's really good.
But see, it's got some truth inside it.
That's what I'm saying.
It's got that real life link because to understand, like, I don't think that every single ancient pagan culture, the similarities that they have, the similar gods, the similar methods of worship, the similar sacrifices, I don't think that all just happened by accident because humans were primitive.
No way.
I think these guys, you know, even up until now, the Egyptian pyramid is on the back of the US dollar bill. Except now it says in Latin, it says New Order of the Ages.
Is that what it says?
That's what it says in Latin.
Oh, wow.
So I don't think it's an accident. You know, you find these symbols you find them in movies, you find them in logos, you find them in everything. It's just being in the background.
Yeah.
And again, that's predictive programming because now it's almost like that same imagery is being manifested around you and you're subconsciously familiar with it.
Yeah.
Until it really, really pops up in your face, like the movies that we watch. The movies that we watch, I don't think it's an accident. Of course, movies are movies, but there's real life twists in them.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. Like, as I said before, they're slowly opening up the faucet. You know what I mean?
Yes.
They're slowly letting everything go,
To
trickle
what
down.
end? But that's the question.
That's what I'm saying too. To what end? Like, I've got no idea where they're going to end this. Are they just releasing it because they're being forced to release it? Right? Or are they releasing it for a bigger purpose? I don't know what it is. Is the aliens in control of everyone? Who the fuck knows? But if they are, then why would they reveal themselves? You know what I mean? Like, if they're already in the king spot, why reveal themselves?
Yeah, that's a big.
So, which makes me think maybe they're not.
They're not in the king spot.
Yeah, maybe they've got a big hand in it, but maybe they're not in control as much as we think. Because it's all that conspiracy mindset, right? Where everyone's lying to you. There's a deeper meaning behind everything, but maybe sometimes there's just not.
It depends, I guess, what angle you look at it. There's a lot of different angles. Personally, I look at it from the prophetic perspective. So that's one angle, and that basically says that these entities are going to make themselves known at a specific time period, and that time period will entail absolute control over humanity. And the way I can sort of relate to that is through tech, because tech is like a big surveillance.
Oh, it is now, especially with China's social system, like, and all the cameras they've got. Like, it's insane.
And I think scientists have been talking about it. It's called the singularity. It's that time where basically right now the web is dispersed into many different websites.
Oh, when they start to outsmart us? Is that what you're talking about?
So what if these entities can basically take over every electronical thing?
They probably can. They probably have been able to do that for centuries already. You know what I mean?
That's what I'm saying as well.
If they can get here from wherever the fuck they come from, then I wouldn't blow me away if they could do something like that.
And if they have spacecrafts that are like, that advanced that they just sort of... Have you seen those videos where they just shoot up in the sky?
Yeah, I swear to God. So they're like controlling their own gravity.
Yeah,
it's like making their own gravity. Now, I saw this on Joe Rogan, and there was this guy who used to work at like Area 51. And basically, this is back in the 80s, right? So there was a bunch of these engines, sort of, and it was like a silver basketball. That's how big it was, and it was like it was on a silver plate. And then when they turned it on, it like created its own gravitational force. It was just hovering there. So basically, it's right. It blows me away on how these guys have come up to the point where they control their own gravity. It's like that Futurama.
Yep.
You know that ship that they all use?
Yep.
Yeah, so the doctor guy in Futurama, he goes, so this engine isn't like any other engines. Imagine instead of the ship moving through the universe is moving around the ship. And it's like the opposite way, like how it's grabbing instead of pushing. And I'm like, oh, okay. That makes sense on how those ships can do what they do.
Yeah, so what I find fascinating is that many of the movies and many of the cartoons and many of the shows, they insinuate that there's like a certain thing, whether it's like we were saying before, a rock or, whatever it may be, and someone discovers it and then it has the power to revolutionize. And you see it time and time again. So who's not to say that the original computer or the original, I don't really know how to explain it, the original technological advancement that shapes all the tech that we have wasn't some discovery by some guy in the shadows or some enchantment. Yeah.
Okay. Oh, so when was the original?
Yeah.
Oh, well, maybe it was like after the Industrial Revolution. Maybe it was like after that, because even if we had that type of technology before then, we couldn't even comprehend on how to use it, and we still probably don't, right? And all the technology that we've got from it, like our mobile phones and our laptops and all that shit, is like such a small. It's like taking a chisel to wood, right? And taking off the tiniest bit, right? And that's it of like this huge block of information that we've got a hold of that we can't do anything about. But, people have also been saying, like a lot of these beings, like we say alien is anything that's not from this world, right? So there's beings from up there, and then there's like Alex Jones was saying this shit, how back with the Nazis, there were like different dimensional beings helping them.
Yeah.
Yeah, have you heard that?
I have, and it's not just the Nazis. It's, again, every ancient king, he'd have on his table counselors, and those counselors would be astrologers, sorcerers, mystics. So they were getting their guidance from higher beings as well. So it's nothing new. It's just got a new twist on it, because for the last 70, 80 years, there's no people have delved into a different way of thinking, of thought. But this whole getting guidance or governing through the power of the gods, just watch Game of Thrones, man. Watch Game of Thrones. I reckon is perfect ancient imagery, because I reckon that back then they were really like that. And if they weren't like that, then they wouldn't have all these stone carvings of hybrid creatures. And, even UFOs, I believe that in ancient Egypt, there's spacecraft looking hieroglyphs. So,
oh, yeah. Even the ones down in Australia. Have you seen that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Blows me away. Now, get this right. So, back in the 80s, Russia, right? They had this program, and basically it was with disabled children. Yeah. And they surgically changed them to look otherworldly, right? Then they put them in like this drone craft that they created. This was around the Cold War, and they just let it crash near America. Now, the Americans ran over there thinking it's an alien ship, right? And then once they had a further investigation, they were humans that were made to look like aliens, and the drone that they were using, right, had a circular cylinder shape, right? Which, again, here's another thing when it comes down to Project Bluebeam. Like, they've been obviously, America's not the only country who has got crash UAPs, right? And they've all been looking into this shit since whoever the fuck knows, for a few hundred years, right? So I bet you, remember all that shit that just recently happened over America? How they were calling out like the pill-shaped UFOs and all this shit?
Yep.
Right? But it looked like there was like little pipes coming out of it and stuff like that. So I bet you that's a human-made one. Right? So like, I don't know if like you've seen it, but the Dr. Grease, it's like a 3-hour live stream. Basically, they also talk about the government having their own versions, right? And they've got like these bells and whistles that are coming out of it. But then their alien versions are completely seamless on the outside.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So
they're more interdimensional.
Yeah, well, yeah. Whatever that is, because I wouldn't even be able to comprehend, even be able to start. Like, I could probably have a theory about it of like how they move and why they move like that. But in reality, we don't know. You know what I mean? Oh, dude, I wish I had the clearance.
Yeah.
Just a little sneak peek. That's all I want. But everything that you see, even on social media, because people have faked this shit so much, you just don't know what's real and what's fake, which really sucks.
But do you think that certain components of our history perhaps have been rewritten to get rid of everything that's to do with that side and keep the general population blind to it for a reason.
What do you mean?
So think of it this way. In post-World War II or during World War II, they had the power to make nukes.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So to have that amount of technological power back then, imagine what they have now, right?
Oh, yeah.
But that same concept, but with flying saucers, UFOs, whatever. What if they've always had the advanced tech that we have now, the smart tech, but they've just been slowly, bit by bit, releasing different layers of complexity. So you know, you have the Windows 97, Windows 2000, whatever, to get humans used to using this alien tech.
Well, that's it.
And the more that they use it, the more, and as generations go on as well, the more we become fixated on the gradual advancements. And it's almost like they're priming us or getting us ready for them to come out as this really advanced species from another planet. But they've been playing that for a long time.
Did you see this a few years ago? The Canadian's defense minister a few years ago, he was retired. And this was before all these conferences that have been coming out now. So I think about 2 years ago, he comes out and he says a few governments around the world have been in contact with alien species, and there's multiple species that they've been in contact with for hundreds of years.
Yeah, I'm not surprised.
Not surprised. And you know what? When that came out, I was telling everyone underneath the sun, I was like, look what he said, look what he said, look what he said. You know what I mean? And no one believed me. And now they're coming out with all these conferences, and this seems legit, and I'm showing people, and they still don't believe me. It pisses me off. Like, how can you guys...
Do you know what? This is not just hundreds of years. 2,000 years ago, the Bible literally talks of spirits that look like frogs. So that's how it's described back then. They look like frogs, and they go out to the kings and the governments of the earth and basically prepare them for something.
Dude, at the end of the day, I hope they're good. I hope the ones that are here to help are here to help, because
you can't be that good if you look like a frog.
hey, they may say the same shit about us, man. You know what I mean?
Do you reckon that's going to happen? What? Maybe, you know, they've, throughout the last 10 years, there's like this progressive sentiment.
Yeah.
And the sentiment is like this whole trans thing, but it's not just to do with sexuality. There's like all these different types, like transhuman, pretty much transhumanism, right?
Okay. Yeah.
Maybe that whole vibe or that whole flow is getting people used to almost dehumanizing the quote unquote traditional form of humanity.
Yeah.
For the purpose of integrating us with an alternate society. An alternate interdimensional society. Maybe that's the whole aim of the game.
Maybe. I've never actually seen it from that point of view.
It would make sense. You know.
It would make sense, but at the same time, a lot of these trans people are like, look, I understand male to female. I understand that. But when they start creating other genders outside those two, you've lost me. Like I'm following what you're saying, but come on. What the fuck is non-binary? I want to be both, or I want to be what they say there was 72 genders or some shit like that. Like that. No.
Instagram now has like they have shitloads of. I always go on other people's profiles and it's like he slash this slash. Have you seen that?
He him.
Yeah.
They them. Have you seen Zem? What the fuck is that? Again, I think we spoke about this in a previous episode, and it's like when the society has come down to the point where like you can relax, but you're relaxing so much it's all a mental thing now. You know, it's not a physical thing where you're constantly worrying about when you're gonna die, because then you don't have time to think about this shit. You don't have time to worry about your gender identity, because you don't. And now we've got so much time, we just overthink. And I swear to God, a lot of those people are just overthinking to the point where they do it, or they join up to these niches to feel a part of something. You know what I mean? And I don't think like a lot of people are doing this because it's like hip or cool. Actually, no. I think there are a few people calling out like, oh, I'm all these like different labels they call themselves. One, why do you need labels? Why not just be yourself? And the only reason why you're labeling yourself with all these different types of genders is because you're labeling yourself for other people to understand you, but no one needs to fucking understand you.
I know, right?
Okay? No one, like you're looking for other people's acceptance.
I know.
You don't fucking need it.
Do you know, it's got a lot to do with the fact that they do it, but they're insecure when they do it.
That's what I'm saying, yeah.
So they need validation.
And then they bite back at anyone who says anything other.
But in context of UFOs and aliens, what if these beings have always been there and they operate on various frequencies? So there's like the frequency that we can see in context of all these disclosures and people that have actually seen stuff. Mm-hmm. But they can also operate on a mental frequency, because the difference between now and let's say the sorcerers back then is they would operate on a spiritual level and connect with these entities through essentially magic, but magic that breeds some sort of vision or realization or alternate revelation, right? And they will take that energy and decide what course of action to take in that certain context. But what if those same entities operate on people's minds, because they're from another universe, right?
Yeah.
They're from another dimension.
Yeah.
So what if they speak into people's intuition, whatever it is that they want to say? The reason why I say this, and I've seen lots of stuff like this, but I've seen this specific trans girl, and she identifies as some sort of bird. So,
yeah.
The thing is, if you go back to the ancient cultures, all you ever see is hybrids, half animals, half humans.
Yeah.
So these beasts almost like that are not natural, right? But what if that's just different variations of those same entities or that same crew? Does that make sense? And they play on people's minds depending on what that person's mind is characterized of, and they govern through energy. And I think, you know, through religion, you would call it demons or jinn or whatever, because demons, they were, again, something like entities that weren't human, but they were inside humans.
Yeah.
And they were inside the minds of humans. So you have these stories of let's say in the Bible, there's a story of this fortune-telling girl. She has a demon inside her and she's able to predict the future. And she was so good in where she was at. I can't remember the name of the city. I think it was in Greece. But she was so good that she had these masters and she would basically foretell certain business things and they would make a lot of profit out of her because she had this super intuition, whatever it was.
Well, that's what I heard that a lot of people are using. Like again, Alex Jones, right? How he's saying that's how they were talking to like these extra dimensional beings, right? Is like actual psychics, not those people who like fairy tale and shit like that, like the actual mediums. And I saw this video like the other day. It was something to do with like some type of fluid in your brain, where and it's like with schizophrenic people, right? So they went around and had a look that a lot of these extremely high up spiritual people, right, are also very, very, very extremely similar to schizophrenics. And what if schizophrenics are in tuned with all this shit, but they can't handle it, so they go nuts?
I think that's personally. Right? I think that's true.
I think that's it. I think they've got it so much that they're taking in so much shit from other places, right? And they've just drove themselves insane because they're thinking it's them, or then when they start thinking it's someone else, then they're labeled as fucking insane.
I don't think the spiritual version and the scientific version, I don't think they conflict at all. I think that there's just different terminologies, and science really revolves around human understanding, but it's limited to human understanding.
Well, that's what it is, science, right? It's the human's understanding of the universe. But then when you've got like spirituality, I find that the more less advanced the species is, the more they blame shit on spiritual and magic and all that other shit. The more advanced they get, the more understanding of the universe they understand, which makes them, for example, maybe that's why the aliens aren't around here acting like fucking gods anymore, because they know that we know that they just got better tech.
But if the aliens were the origin of the actual tech and the mind programming and the imagery that you see in movies and, you know, all that sort of stuff, all this construction of the so-called matrix.
Yeah.
If they're the authors of that, then that whole sentiment of our understanding is king is also still designed by them. Does that make sense? And our understanding, it's never ever going to be complete, because the more it's almost like the top gets higher the more that you climb, right? And you keep on climbing. That to me is science, and I reckon that the ladder will likely fall off in terms of the end of civilization before it even nears completion. And I don't even think that we've had 1 or 2 or 3% in terms of getting, because science, it's really about completion. It's really about having almost like God-given wisdom. It's divine wisdom. And you know everything. But I don't think that the human design will ever reach a point where anyone knows everything. I think that the more...
I hope we don't kill ourselves before then.
I know we're going to kill ourselves before then.
You have so little faith in humanity.
Very little.
Oh, dude. Well, I hope we get to the point where we do somehow evolve. And this is going to be like thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of years into the future, a few 100,000 years. But like, I hope we get to that point.
What would be the point?
Well, like the higher you get, the bigger the horizon gets. Correct?
Yeah,
Yeah.
somewhat. But the thing is, you would have to compromise normal humanly things, like the things, like
Well,
let's.
yeah, I know, but things change over time. Like, see how like 1,000 years has done to us in our culture. You know, like another 1,000 years, it won't be compromise; it'll be evolution. And we will be evolving into something different than what we are today.
But then you
Like,
wouldn't enjoy the simple things that we have.
but then what's the simple things then? You know what I mean? The simple things just change. It could be the simple things like a nice space ride through space from one planet to another. That could be a simple thing. That'd be dope. I think I was born in the wrong era.
I know.
Like legit. Like I'd love to be born then, but you know, we'll see. See what happens. Maybe the aliens will come down. Maybe the rapture is really just aliens saving all the ones that they think need saving, and then leave the rest to die. Who knows? But yeah.
See, I personally believe that we were created to be an interdimensional celestial race of human, like of species. I just think it's more so about the method of how you choose to get there. So, religion and spirituality, faith, these are all methods that have come down in various forms throughout the sands of time. Whereas science, it's like a new religion almost, because science in itself, it's a religion, because the whole purpose of religion is to basically ward off the bad spirits, so to ward off misfortune, sickness, whatever,
Yeah.
as well as get to this epitome of celestial euphoria, right?
Euphoria. I like how you put that.
Like the Garden of Eden, you know, it was like
Yeah.
a paradise, right?
Yeah.
And heaven in itself is characterized by stars, space, whatever you want to call it. I don't think it looks at all like, you know, those little cloud pictures that you see that are very mainstream that come to mind. I think that it's characterized by a celestial body that's different to the carnal, you know, flesh and blood body that we have now. And that's actually really how the Bible describes it. It's described as you'll shine like the stars forever. So it doesn't associate it with anything. It actually really associates it with everything that people want to evolve anyway, except this one, it's given for free. And that's obviously, by biblically speaking, by faith in Christ. Whereas the other one, it's like you're trying to build your way there. So it comes down to, I guess, where are you going to put your money? The tech engineers that sort of get us up there, or the aliens or the UFOs, and they're whatever the philosophy may be, or simple faith that it's a free gift. And one to me personally is, you know, I don't trust humans enough to trust them with anything.
Yeah, I know.
let
but
alone getting me.
If you don't trust humans, right, then why trust a religion that was built by humans?
It wasn't built by humans.
I know that's what you think. But, you know, I'm pretty sure like a lot of the religions today were built for control.
So Jordan Peterson puts it really, really good. And it's the way that I've discovered it personally.
Yeah.
And it's why I've chosen the Bible. I'm not going to talk about anything else because I've looked into everything else. But the Bible basically has thousands of interconnected hyperlinks. And each one is written at a different time by different people in different places for a different purpose, but they all point to the exact same thing. And that thing that they're pointing to is the Messiah, Christ. But that on its own, that book outlives any human. So it's written by humans, but it's not written by one person. It's written by 60 or 70 or 80 different people across different times, like centuries apart.
But there's like way more books of that Bible that they threw out.
Yeah.
Because it probably didn't follow the ideology that they wanted to put forth. Does that not click?
So
like they probably pointed in different directions, and they were like, well, no, none of this shit. And they put it all the books that spoke.
So the thing about the Bible, it's very similar to... Have you ever seen one of those movies where you pretty much need a key to understand it, right? And that key, if you don't have the key and it's all just theoretical, then it becomes useless. It's almost like just words. But if you have the key to actually draw out spirit and revelation from it, then everything comes alive around you. It's almost like, how do I explain it? It's accessed by faith, which it tells you it's accessed by faith. That's the first thing.
But that faith in itself is blind.
It is. We walk by faith, not by sight. I agree.
But that's it. How can the blind lead the blind? You can walk them around in a dark room in circles. And because you're on faith, you think you're going somewhere, but you're not.
So the thing about faith is, people can easily...
It's like hope.
Easily believe in anything and everything else. The thing is, everyone has faith in something. You have faith in yourself. You have faith in the government. You have faith in whatever the case may be. It's choosing to put your faith into what's higher. And the more that you learn through faith, the more revelation you attain. And the more revelation you attain, the more you have different eyes to see life. And the more you have different eyes to see life, the more, again, life sprouts around you. So it's not blind faith. I wouldn't have all these things to say if I was just completely blind faith. God starts to show you the reality of existence in itself. And that's why you can organize different various things that pertain to life, even UFOs, what we're talking about now. It's just organizing them in the order that He's set. So it's got nothing. You don't stay blind. Your eyes actually open.
Yeah, but if
the faith,
I get the faith, right? I get that, right? And I get you saying that you have to have a key for this shit to fully understand it. But how can you fully understand something that you don't have the full grip over? Like, for example, because all those books aren't there anymore, right? They've thrown them out. What if some of them were talking about more of the ideology being from aliens? You wouldn't know that because it's gone. But they've only given you it's like giving you a torch, yeah? And whatever you see in that light is what they've given you. And then you got to use only what's in that light to gather up your understanding of the universe. But in the darkness around that light is all the shit they've hidden from you. And there's more elements to this shit. I've always thought it's really one-dimensional. I know you think of it completely different, and there is so many aspects. There's so many different ways you can see it. There's so many ways and avenues that you can go down with it. But I've always seen it as something that's... How do I explain it? For example, as I said before, the more technologically advanced we get, the more understanding of the universe that we get, the less people are going to be looking to religion. And that's not, I don't think that's like the devil's way of like doing things. That's just humanity in ourselves.
So I've said this before. How does a 2,000-year-old book, let me ask you this.
Yeah.
How does a 2,000-year-old book predict a new world order? That's one world financial system, one world, because we discussed this on another show, and we said that 2,000 years ago, it was prophesied. The thing about the Bible, it tells you the end from the beginning. So those hyperlinks that I was mentioning just before,
Yeah.
they're pretty much stating what's going to happen. Back then, it said that 200 years ago, this is just an example, 200 years from this moment, this is going to happen. And then it's written later on when it actually occurs. So the prophecies are very fine line, right?
Yeah.
Every single book has its share of prophecies. That's what's to come. And it keeps on getting fulfilled and fulfilled and fulfilled and fulfilled and fulfilled. So it's got a 100% success rate so far. Then it leaves you with another set of prophecies that describe the end of humanity. And that's describing a world that's very, very intricately interconnected, which is very similar to the world that we have today.
Yeah.
Right? This, again, like I said on our other show, was a time where to get from Sydney to Brisbane or the US to Mexico is like weeks of voyage. But it goes into precision and it tells you there's going to be a time where every single person is going to be under this one world umbrella, this coalition of nations, this one world financial system. And on top of that, you'll need a certain mark, which is easily done with digital stuff, to be able to buy and sell. How did that come to be?
Yeah, but like, look,
Is it an accident?
It wasn't. Maybe it wasn't. Maybe the people, like, you got to understand from the people who was running this shit from back then, that was the church. So it was the Catholic Church, right?
No.
No, but I know. But what I'm saying is that from the Bible that we have today, right? Everything, all the scriptures put in today, right? Came from that church, right? You get me? Like, yes and no. Like all the books were written at different times, different places.
What if?
But the Bible, the Bible that we have today, right, was built by them, right? But that's not the only religion that has a sort of an end time to it as well. You know, you look into the Anunnaki one. That's very, very similar to how the Christian Bible says the end's going to be, but not in those so many words. You know what I mean? And then you go over to the what was it called before they were wiped out by the Spanish? Incas? No, the Mayans. The Mayans had a religion that was very similar as well, right? To the Christian Bible, yeah. And as soon as the Spanish figured that shit out, what did they do? They just sent in the Spanish flu and killed them all, because they also thought that this guy was one of their gods that came across the ocean, because that's what it was saying in their prophecies. Now, just because there's no dates, specific dates in the Bible, a lot of religions around the world are very similar. But let's bring this back to the UAPs, right? From my understanding, okay, so you said that you have a theory that when the aliens do come back, it's not really the aliens, but it's the devil himself posing as the aliens, correct?
Yep.
Why do you think that?
All right, so back to what you just said about there's all these ancient alongside, so the Bible, it's comprised of both the Old Testament and the New Testament.
Yeah.
The New Testament is when Jesus comes. So Jesus is born New Testament, but the Old Testament, you see the actual context of all these nations, and then you have this nation, which is the Israelites, whom will be the forebearers of this Messiah who will rule the entire world. So back then, this whole concept of Jesus being the Messiah was only carried through the ancient Israelites. And they were similar to, like, not similar in terms of characteristics, because they had obviously the law and all this sort of stuff, but they were the ancient race, and next to them was the ancient Egyptians, the ancient Mayans, the ancient Greeks, where the Anunnaki and this sort of people that believed in those pagan gods were present at the same time, right? And you see that God calls them out, and he calls them out of Egypt. Well, first he established the first man, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, first family, because there's a flow to this. Then out of that family is birthed an entire nation. That nation was captive under ancient Egypt. And very, very funny, because they were enslaved under Egypt, right? And when God says, I'm going to take you out for my own purpose. So you can also see this spiritual play, right? And he says, I'm going to cast judgment on the gods of Egypt, right? So that shows this parallel between the God of the Hebrews, and then all the other demigods.
You know, all those times that God was speaking to these guys of the Bible. You know, you got Joseph, you got Moses, all that other shit. Right. I remember when the burning bush was happening with Moses, and I said, "Oh, maybe the bush that's on fire is an acacia tree, and he's just tripping on DMT." Right. Or what you said before sparked an interest. You said about these aliens or extra dimensional beings speaking to everyone through, you know, other ways, other forms. What if that's happening? Exactly the way that you were talking about how they're influencing all the trans community, right? But they've been doing that with the Christian community for eons.
There's a story, right? And it's when Moses goes to Pharaoh, and God tells Moses to throw down his staff. It's going to turn into a snake.
Yeah.
Then Pharaoh tells his sorcerers, throw down your staffs. Their staffs also turn into snakes, right? But then Moses' staff, these are all just snakes. So they look similar, like what you're saying. They look similar, but Moses' one eats all the other ones.
Could be a hologram.
So it's God. It's God literally eating everything that's left.
It could be legit, be a hologram, and another alien species just making that whole play.
But if you were to go down the sands of time, none of their mythology lasted. So only Moses' snake and Moses' story actually stood the test of time. So
that's the one they wanted to happen. That's the one they wanted to.
So here's the thing about this whole what they wanted. It's actually the exact opposite, because they wouldn't have wanted that at all. After they leave Egypt, because that's what's written.
Yeah, I know. But if they planned this centuries in the back, right, and they've been fiddling with us for like all since then, all they've got to do is just make whatever they've done in that book come to fruition. You know what I mean?
Centuries wouldn't explain the hyperlinks and the prophecies. So if it was all a grand human plan, then you wouldn't have such consistency.
Not human. I've said these extra dimensional beings. That's what I'm talking about.
So the whole Bible is a story of war between God and Satan. So definitely it says that Satan does have plans and he does have schemes, and he is almost like a puppeteer that tries to put things together, but that doesn't negate at all that the existence of that Hebrew God. And to put it into perspective, shortly after they leave Egypt, they're slaves, they're commanded through the power of God and instructed to go into lands that have giants, Nephilim or Anunnaki, with 6-fingered hands, right? So these, and the way that they're described is like they're like grasshoppers in the face of these alien or hybrid pagan Anunnaki worshipping societies, and they're called to basically obliterate everything. And so thus that was established, the actual land of Israel, which is still in here today and still also having modern day problems, but that's established for the purpose of birthing the Messiah. And those wars and how they're brutal in those wars alone pretty much explains the ancient version of the same friction that's still growing through now it's progressives versus whatever, spirituality versus science, let's say, because all this stuff, it starts in an origin, and you can actually see the two lineages grow through time. So it's just different. It's different now, but it's really an ancient war, and it's literally Genesis 3:15. He says to Lucifer, you're going to have your offspring, I'm going to have my offspring, and they're going to be at hostility with each other up until the time of the end. And that's the difference between, and if you have a look at the two lineages as salvation, that's also the difference between self-salvation, which is building the ladder to get up with the aliens, let's say, hypothetically, or faith. So, yeah, it's I guess, what you want to put your money on.
Yeah, I guess we'll just like put odds on this. We should put down a bet.
Yeah.
Yeah, we should put down a bet. I wouldn't mind that. But you know what? A lot of people in the past have always thought their time was the end. And
do you know what? To our viewers, I'm happy to bet with you guys. I'm gonna get rich.
What's the point of money, man? At the end, there's no point. Thanks for making it this far. Let us know your predictions for how they're going to reveal themselves or not.
Hit the bell and subscribe.